I'm not going to go too far into depth on this stuff because technically this is going to be stuff for your next semester. But these are things to be looking out for. Essentially, we're ending our semester at the Enlightenment, at sort of the height of the Enlightenment. And what's going to happen immediately is this sort of reaction against it. So if the Enlightenment's way over here with reason, and emotions maybe are over here on this thing, here's the Enlightenment. And the romantics are going to be way over here. Is that reason is not a great thing. So you're going to get this pendulum from here all the way over here. And what we're going to see is a sort of back and forth for the next 200, 300 years. So the Romantic movement is going to be sort of this thing that happens right off the bat. It's really late 1700s, early 1800s. But the 1800s, 19th century is really when it kicks off. And it's re-privilege feeling and emotion over reason. So you talk about things like, genius, and like this person here in this picture, this sort of famous picture of the Romantic era, staring off into the void, the nature, and all that kind of stuff. It's the genius, for example, is not someone who accesses their reason well. The genius is someone who accesses that other thing, whatever that other of reason is, better than the rest of us. So Beethoven, for example, a genius of this era, he writes his symphonies not by accessing his use of reason and applying reason rigorously, and therefore you get this amazing symphony. He accesses something other, this sort of this void out here, and is able to access that and put that into place in music so we can touch that other in a way that he has better access to. That becomes the idea of genius. Feeling, emotion over reason, love is far more important than reason. That becomes sort of this way of thinking about it. And so there's this new search with the Romantic movement for what lies beyond our senses. Not just what our senses can tell us, but what lies beyond our senses. In fact, during the Romantic era, this 19th century, there's also a period of time called the Gothic, in which there are sort of, I guess, for lack of a better term, ghost stories. And those become more popular again because, again, it's stuff beyond our senses that's people are saying is there, needs to be accessed to understand what it means to be human. This era actually is something that Dr. Tate Peterson works on quite a bit. So you might talk to her about that stuff or take a class from her that does the Romantic movement. The modern era, 20th century and 21st century, is really this pendulum between deep despair and soaring optimism. So one day, and if you just sort of study your Western Civ or World Civ in the 20th century and 21st century, it goes from World War I, absolute despair, to the Roaring '20s, everything's awesome, to the Great Depression, absolute awfulness, to the recovery from the Great Depression, things are going good again. World War II and the Holocaust, awful. It's just 1950s, everybody's Leave It to Beaver and everything's great. 1960s, Vietnam War. It's just this back and forth, this pendulum between deep despair and soaring optimism. And this is going to be true for both those who adhere to the Enlightenment and those who adhere to alternatives to the Enlightenment, that these things just sort of say, science can solve everything. Oh, science created all the problems that we have. The economy's growing. Oh, the economy's crashing, and all the horrible things that go with this. And art and literature is going to follow along with those things as well, is that you're going to see, often almost in contradiction to it. It's like during the Roaring '20s, you're going to get The Great Gatsby written during that time. So it's... this is sort of the outcome. An example would be for the technology gives us better medicine, which is awesome, but it also gives us nuclear bombs and the horror of waiting for the nuclear, the nuclear war. The Cold War is essentially that, right? Everything's getting better. I'm getting washing machines, cars are better, the economy's improving, and yet we're also always going to class and trying to figure out what will happen when a nuclear bomb drops in the middle of San Diego. And we have the same sort of things today, is that I guess you could even say the coronavirus sort of fits in this as well, is globalization is super awesome. We love the fact that we can travel around the world. Those of us who can afford it can travel on the world and see things that we've never ever seen before. But that also allows viruses to spread a lot faster than they ever could before. So this is part of the story that we have today to talk about. Now, I have one more set of alternatives I want you to look at. It's a guy named, well, two guys, Martin Buber, and you're going to actually look at a guy named Emmanuel Levinas, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about that.